generally smaller spills as far as national media is that? And is it, the cost is borne by insurance? What?
Okay, so the question was, for some of these spills, what are the costs typically? Is that on? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it can vary. The more people, of course, the more people you have there, the more the cost is going to be. Who covers the cost? Typically, it's the RP. If there's an RP identified, they would pay all the costs for the cleanup, the government, the people that are out there, disposal, pretty much everything. If it's no RP, we don't know who it is, then the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund is there to pick up the cost and then make sure that all the agencies are covered and everything is covered. Typical costs, if you're looking for an individual worker, it could be anywhere from $40 to $60 per day. And there's typically like a 10 to 15% addition to that administrative fee on top of that, plus their equipment, trucks, rental fees for trucks, rental fees for front-end loaders, beach equipment, and then you also have the cost of any government officials that may be out there watching or making sure things are being done. So, they could go to the millions of dollars fairly easily.
The Texas citywide response had a pretty broad coverage of area. They had to clean up in Galveston, and then Galveston Island, Galveston Bay, and then all the way down to Back Border, and it often had to go all the way down to Pleasure Island National Seashore, almost to Mansfield Pass. And that spill was running 1.2 million a day. And so there's a lot of people. The spill management team is very eager. They're the ones that kind of directing all the contractors, and they're all pushing very hard to make sure that we right size at that burn rate.
The other thing too is typically the Coast Guard on their side of it, they're not really concerned about costs. They're concerned about getting it cleaned up. So of course they want to get it cleaned up as quickly as possible. There's other things to do besides oil spill response. So they'll stay out there as long as it's needed until basically the state and the Fed sign off.
Other questions? Okay.
Question about,
Hold on.
the Phototera and the Poseidon. I just wondered if CGA has worked with them at all, or have you ever talked through what that would look like logistically if y'all had to work together in response, and then how, I know they're not here, but how it works through their contract right now.
Okay. Right now, they actually have a contract with Environment Canada. I just talked to one of their representatives. They're flying 300 hours a year for Canada, so they're still going to be based here in Houston and doing doing their flights for Canada. But they're available. The way it would work for us, they're working with airborne support. So through airborne support, any of our members could use them that way. If the Coast Guard, let's say, needed them, the way it would work for the federal government, because it's an emergency, the federal government can contract with them right away, say we want you to fly, whatever, and then they would follow up with a contracting officer who would negotiate the rate. As far as for us, the way it would work, if they were flying offshore, they could send emails to our boats, because our boats have email addresses. They could actually send the information while they're flying to our boats to tell us where to go. So, or another, let's say if there's an MSRC vessel out there, they could send it to them too. So, really great system. That's all I can say about it. Can't say enough.
Okay, other questions? Oh, and Tara's going to read one from one of our online folks, and it's Vessel of Opportunity. Okay.
So this actually came in earlier when the research panel was on, but we decided it was more of a response question. And This is from online viewer Bruce Baird, and we read these word for word. So it says, regarding myths as mentioned earlier, it was my impression in Louisiana for Deepwater Horizon response that there was a lot of wasted effort on the Vessels of Opportunity program, with shrimp boats towing hard boom with no program for capturing and pumping out oil. It appeared to amount to nothing more than a show with almost no oil collected. Similarly, the boom around shorelines was extensively used to very little effect except killing of marsh grass when it was displaced onto land. What can this Sea Grant program, and by extension responders, do to document whether these impressions were accurate, and if so, how this waste of resources can be prevented in future spill events?
Well, I guess there was a tale of two stories with the vessels of opportunity. There were some vessels of opportunity that worked really well. For instance, they also use them for transporting individuals logistically from point A to point B. Some of the stuff that they were using for skimming, they typically didn't use hard boom, they used sorbent boom, and they dragged that along. Probably not the optimum system to use with them, and I think in a lot of ways it probably was for show. If I was a fisherman, there's some profit to me to actually do that, because I'm getting paid to respond. I'm also getting paid because I can submit a claim because I can't fish, and then potentially if there's any health effects from me responding, I can submit a claim for that too. So I can get paid 3 times if I'm a fisherman. So I don't know why I would complain about actually dragging boom through the water. So what was the second part of the question? As far as the boom, there was a lot of boom that was placed, and typically, in Deepwater Horizon, it was a little bit different than our typical spills because there's a lot of politics involved. The measurement was how much boom was placed versus how much boom was placed effectively, or how much boom was actually needed to be out there. So there was a lot of boom that was misplaced or that washed ashore and then probably did some damage to the marsh. So I think in the future, and this is what's going on now, is the state of Louisiana's Municipal Coordinator's Office is working with the Coast Guard to identify sensitive areas and those areas where they feel that they're priorities, priority A, B, C, and D. And based on what those priorities are, those are the areas that would be protected versus everything that could potentially be impacted by oil. When we would typically respond to an oil spill, what happens is there's an assessment done. You're looking at what kind of environmental sensitivity there is in a particular area, what needs to be protected, and those areas would be protected. That's actually what happened during Deepwater. For instance, Brent Island was an area that was very sensitive. That area was actually boomed. That island was actually boomed off very effectively. But the problem was there's a lot of areas that pulled resources to boom areas that probably didn't need to be boomed off. So then you needed more boom to cover the areas that actually really needed to be covered. So that area process, they're identifying those areas that we need to protect. The state, the locals are actually making those decisions. And then when we have a spill in the future, those are the areas that would be protected versus everything. So that would also decrease the amount of boom that would actually be needed, and you would be more effective.
Jackie, did you have anything to add? Or?
Because, when people just put all the ground sorbent material, I hate to call it boom, and in front of hundreds of miles of wetland areas, just because they political purposes. And then we had Hurricane Bonnie offshore, and push a lot of that boom in the marsh, and then we spent a lot of time and money developing methods to try to remove that boom from the shore, from the marshy interior, to push it not just to the edge, but inside. So we had to, I think crews worked for something like 4 months, special boom removal teams to do that. So we've documented that in some of our job aids and response to oil spills and marshes, and show how that improper deployment of boom causes more damage. It doesn't have to providing benefits. So hopefully that's one of those mistakes we'll never make again.
Any other questions? No, online? No, okay, so, we are going to shift over to the last part of our seminar.